right. All right. Let's do this. Hey guys, this is Bruce. Welcome to ConvoCourses, and we're going to continue on our journey through the GRC, Governance, Risk, and Compliance Roadmap. And we've actually got a couple minutes here, so I'll give it a couple minutes while I make sure everything is good. Let's see, TikTok's good. Yep, TikTok is going. And we've got 3 more minutes till the start of this thing. Trying to do these things on time. All right, so we've got everything up and running right now, looks like. So let me just get this set up real quick. We're going to start where we started last week. We'll pick up from where we left off. And just so you know, real soon, got more stuff coming on a more continuous basis. I'm setting it all up in the background, and it'll be a group where we can all meet together. It'll be lots of free stuff, a lot of things that people have been asking me for years that I'm going to start implementing. You guys are on the ground floor of this, so a lot of stuff I'll be releasing for free to people who are watching me and have been involved with this from the beginning. Let's get this thing started. Okay. Yeah, we'll start a little bit early. All right. So we're going to start off from where we were last week. So we already talked about the GRC roadmap, and with our focus being NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0. And the reason why it's important to start off with this, if you have no idea of what's going on with GRC, is that the NIST CSF is special in that the way it breaks things down is by functions. Basic cybersecurity functions that every organization, big, small, or medium, should have. And if you're trying to align yourself with governance, risk, and compliance, this is a great place to start, because the way it breaks things up and the way it's very versatile, it can fit in almost any industry. So that's what makes it special, and that's why I wanted to focus on this. We already talked about kind of the why of the GRC roadmap, and then last week we discussed this right here, this little map right here, where we discussed the overview of what NIST CSF is. We talked about the functions. We talked about there's 6 different functions, and those break up into categories and subcategories that are like controls, right? And we already talked about, listed each one of those functions out: the govern, protect, identify, detect, respond, recover. And we talked about how those break into different categories, subcategories. We talked about profiles from a very high level. And to be honest with you, just knowing this alone is going to make you 99% more knowledgeable on this than most people in the human population, because most people don't know nothing about NIST CSF, even though it's a very powerful framework, one of the most powerful frameworks out there, referenced around the world in many different languages in many different countries. It's very effective. And so that's what we talked about last week, an overview of this. Now what we're going to do is go a little bit deeper into the govern portion of this. So let's do it. So here we are in the govern function. Govern, you'll see, is right here in this middle ring here. And it's foundational to everything else. Things always come back to govern, because govern is the leadership, the management of everything else, of identifying, protecting, detection, and everything else that goes with having cybersecurity. That middle ring is what we're getting. It's foundational. And so that's why we're going to talk about it first. And if you look here in the functions, it used to be part of identify, and they had it sprinkled throughout all the other functions. And then they broke in CSF 2, they broke it out into its own thing. So that's the main difference you'll see between NIST CSF 1 and NIST CSF 2. There are some other differences, but that is one of the main ones, is that they broke out the govern function by itself. And if you're wondering what does this have to do with governance, risk, and compliance, the govern function is directly linked to governance of the GRC. GRC stands for governance, risk management, and compliance. Govern is specifically governance. And if you look closely at the categories, and we'll cover these, so I'll just list them right now. The categories consist of organizational context, something you might see in ISO 27001. I believe it's in clause 4 of ISO 27001. Context, we'll talk a little bit about that. Risk management strategy, supply chain risk management, huge nowadays because a lot of things are linked to that. So a lot of huge breaches have happened because of that. Roles, responsibility, authorities, and then policies and oversight. So those are the main categories of govern that we'll touch on today in govern. So let's keep going here. Let's keep going here. If I can get back into my slides here. All right, here we go. Understanding governance in cybersecurity. It's a foundational piece of GRC. Governance, risk, and compliance. If you talk about risk management, you have to have a method of managing that. That's governance. If you talk about compliance, to put compliance throughout an organization, it comes back to governance. Governance is foundational. It's central to NIST CSF 2.0. And really, it's central to any kind of information security management system that you have, regardless of whether you're doing ISO 27001, NIST 800, you have to have governance. It's foundational. It deals with strategy and policy and how the organization is going to set those rules. That is governance in a nutshell. In my book, oh, that's a terrible picture. In my book, I use the idea of hungry hippos, and I use that as an analogy for govern. Like I use Hasbro. Hasbro is the organization that owns hungry hippos. And to just break it down the most simple way that I can put it, the game Hungry Hippos has a set of rules, and the rules are that the hippos on the board have to gobble up as many balls as possible. So that's the rules of the game, right? There's other things like you can't put your hand on there and snatch the balls off the board. You can't. Those rules is govern. There's a governance behind the game. That's what governance is. Govern is making sure that there are rules. Number one, a strategy, a policy, if you will, rules of the game that everybody must abide by. So even when people say regulations are bad and this and that, think about the rules of a road. That's another analogy I can give you. Rules of the road. I've gone to several different countries. All right, let me give you my perspective on this. I've driven in several different countries. I've driven in many states in the US. I've driven in the Middle East. I've driven in Korea, and I've driven in Europe. I've driven in Germany, and I've driven in Italy. And let me tell you something, all of them have a different set of rules. Now, they're the same, just like cybersecurity. You're going to have best security practices. Red means stop, green means go. There's lines, there's different sides of the road that you're going to drive in different directions. All of them have something like that. But when you start to get into the nitty gritty of the rules, it gets a little bit different. For example, when I was in Italy, southern Italy, yellow meant go faster. In Germany, they were really strict on the rules. There weren't many people who didn't abide by the rules. It was safer to drive in Germany than it is to drive here. In Middle East, the rules of the road were like a suggestion, a mere suggestion. People weren't stopped unless there was a major accident, really. You could speed. There were so many accidents, and it's really gives you an idea of if organizations don't have rules, it's just chaos. If you go to a place and you drive that has no rules at all, it's absolute chaos. More people get hurt. There's a lot of risk to just get around. And it's the same thing with a network. If you don't have rules in play, then it's just chaos. It's absolute mayhem, and it's not going to make anybody any safer or richer. An overview of what you have in governance is what we talked about in the beginning, which is oversight, organizational context, roles and responsibilities, policies, procedures, stuff like that. Let's keep going here. We already went through this. If I can get to the next slide. I really got to master this. Okay, so let's talk about the first one, organizational context. What does this mean? It's where your organization has an understanding of their industry. This is super important. Because if you are in an organization, be it public or private, and they are dealing with very sensitive information, if they don't understand how sensitive their information is, you have real problems. A good example of that is Doge. So they're going into organizations that have very sensitive information. Now, the people who work there, they know how sensitive this information is. They've seen the breaches, they're seeing insider threats, they're seeing some real stuff. Some of the people who've been there a long time. Then you get this third-party organization that comes in here and doesn't really know all they have they have an idea of that it's important. I'm not saying they're too stupid to know that there's no important information on there, but maybe they don't know how bad it can really get. So this other organization comes in and they start sharing certain information that they shouldn't. It just gets really bad. Other examples of organizations I've been in that know their industry very well, they also know their customer. They know what types of things that they need to provide to their customer. So in the public space, if you've been working there for a long time, you know how important it is to protect people's information to the best extent of the law. Regulatory requirements is another big thing. If you work for the FAA, for example, there's certain regulations they have to abide by. If you work in retail, there's certain retail PCI DSS, for example, things that they have to abide by. So this is GVOC, or organizational compliance. It's very important for an organization to know who they're working for, how important their information is, who are the stakeholders, and what do they expect. That's OC, organizational context. OC1 breaks up into different subcategories that are like controls. It's things like organizational mission. What is the organizational mission? One example of that would be Verizon. It has its own communication mission statements that were beaten into our heads when we were there. And it's the same thing with the Department of Defense, whether in the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marines, whatever. They always have some kind of a mission or a vision of what you're supposed to do, and they beat it into your head over and over again. It's really important for everybody in the organization to have some idea of what the main mission is. And that's where part of the organizational context means and what it's all about. And then you're getting into things like the actual roles and responsibilities. The organization needs to put out there the roles and responsibilities, and each one of those roles and responsibilities need to know the purpose of their mission. So that also fits right into OC1. Internal and external stakeholders. Stakeholder is people who have a responsibility in your organization. So that means internally, you've got contractors, you've got full-time employees, you've got CEOs, you've got mid-tier managers, you've got all these different people who are involved and have a stake in it. External would be customers, or it'd be external vendors, B2B type vendors, things like that. So stakeholders, identifying the stakeholders, establishing communication with them, and educating them is also part of that first OC-1. Let's go straight to OC-3. This is legal requirements, regulatory requirements. It's really important not only to know the context of what industry your organization is in, but also what are the regulations that are for us that we have to abide by. Super important. OC-1 is critical objectives and capabilities. What do we need? What is our mission? What are we supposed to do? How are we going to do it? Going into OC5, which is capabilities of our service. And how are we going to map this? We're going to talk about setting the goals for our organization, aligning with business objectives. So these are things at a high level. If you are in a management position, if you are in a project manager position, sometimes these things will come up. A program manager position, sometimes you'll be a part of these types of meetings and these types of discussions, because you're seeing the mission or the project from a different perspective. So you'll see it from the eyes of a C-level exec, from the eyes of a manager, and there's some salesy speak in there. From the perspective of somebody who's in the weeds, you just want to fix routers or fix switches or fix the voice over IP or whatever it is, right? You're not really thinking about the capabilities of service, not in this context. You might think of it in terms like if you're a network engineer, you're thinking about, okay, how do we make sure that the quality of the actual data is faster or whatever, but you're not thinking about it from terms of the organization. But as a GRC person, you do have to think about these things because you'll be sitting in these meetings. You might have to help write a policy, and the policies, the procedures from a high level, the directives, they come from knowing the context of the organ. What regulations do we have to abide by if we're in retail? Who are our stakeholders? Who are our customers? How do we provide specific capabilities and outcomes that are expected of us? Those are some of the discussions that need to be had at the the GVOC level, organizational context. So let's get into risk management strategy. One of the most important pieces of this is making sure that us as cybersecurity people, and really anybody, IT professionals, help desk, have the backing of leadership. And if leadership doesn't define how we're going to address certain weaknesses in our organization, that is a huge problem. Because then it's like you're like a chicken with your head cut off. There's going to be weaknesses. There's going to be things that don't fall into let's remediate it now and it's fixed. Most things, as a matter of fact, fall into that category of we can't remediate it immediately in a timely manner. How are we going to address this? And that's where GV.RM comes in, risk management strategy. How are we going to manage our risk as a whole? If something doesn't fit neatly into this box of remediation, how are we going to have a comprehensive strategy to deal with those things? And here are some of the ways that you deal with those. So one is to define the objectives of risk management. Set specific goals, align those with your business, and measure the progress. Have a risk appetite and a tolerance statement, meaning how much risk are we willing to take? We got to clearly articulate, clearly explain, document what level of risk we are willing to take. This is done in a risk management policy, a risk management strategy document, and it will break down things like the low, moderate, and high, and what are we willing to do. I'll give you a specific example. It's better if I just give you a specific example. When I was working in the DoD space, there's certain levels of risk that they were not going to take. Like if we had criticals, it just was a no-go, period. We weren't allowed to have criticals. If something came up on our scanner as a critical, we had to explain what was going on because maybe it was a false positive, right? Maybe the scanner's telling us that it's a critical, but it's not actually a critical. But that was a no-go. We were not allowed to have criticals in our organization unless we had a very good explanation for it. They were not willing they would not tolerate that level of risk. So there's certain levels of risk that that organization might not be cool with. They might not be comfortable with that. And so you've got to define that clearly. In our documentation, it would say you were not allowed to have criticals. We're not allowed to have criticals at all. You need to get rid of it. You need to do something because we're not going to pass any more assessments if we don't, or ATO. We won't get an ATO, an authority to operate. Our chief will not sign off on it if it has a critical or it has a very good explanation of why it's there. So if you had a really good explanation of why that critical was there or why we're going to live with that critical, then that might be something that will suffice. But risk appetite and risk tolerance directly addresses that very thing. What level of risk are we willing to take as an organization? That has to be clearly explained and communicated in your organization. So let's keep going here. RM3, this is cybersecurity risk management activities. What are we doing to manage? What are our actions to actually remediate risk from the highest level possible within our organization. When we're talking about govern, just remember this. When we talk about govern or governance, we're talking about what's the culture of our company and how are we going to deal with these issues as an organization. And it's really not just the CEOs. It's not really just the managers. It's the culture of the organization. So that actually involves everyone. Governance, it involves how all of us are going to respond as a culture, as an organization. How are we going to respond to these things? And that's what GVRM is addressing. Cybersecurity risk management activities. What are we going to do to manage these risks properly? And in this example, they're saying integrate ERM, create a unified risk register. That means like having a spreadsheet or some kind of a database where we track all the risks that happen. And we might do that in a enterprise risk management. We have a process to deal with risks. Like normally what happens in an organization is you have a database of all risks that happen, right? Any kind of risk that comes up, we have a procedure that we're going to do to take care of it. If we have, say, malware pops up, it's discovered, what are we going to do? We're going to eradicate it. We're going to disconnect the system. We're going to try to contain that, quarantine that malware so that it won't go anywhere else. We're going to do whatever it happens to be. Like there's certain steps that take place to do incident response to actually handle that particular risk. So we have to have activities that are in place that's across the organization to handle whatever cybersecurity risk that we have. And that's what this one's talking about. GVRM4, strategic direction, risk response. So risk response is, I'll give you a specific example. Risk response is mitigating, remediation of risk, but it can also be a plan of action and milestone or an activity that we do if we couldn't remediate that particular vulnerability in a timely manner. And put it in plain English, if you have a weakness in your organization, say Chrome has there's a way that a hacker can exploit Chrome, your browser. And we got to fix our whole organization. We have 1,000 systems, and all 1,000 systems use Chrome, and they're using a weak version of Chrome, a Chrome that can be exploited or can be manipulated and used to where they can steal data or something. What are we going to do? What is our risk response as an organization to take care of that? It doesn't always, sometimes you can't always immediately fix it with a patch, send the patch out and it fixes everything because it might break something else. So a risk response might include something like, okay, we have an exception to this because we know that this maybe on these 1,000 systems, they're not attached directly to the internet. Maybe they're only attached to the internal network. So we have, instead of our normal 7-day period of fixing that particular patch, we have more time because we know it doesn't go to the internet. So our risk is lower. So you might say, okay, we're going to have an action plan to fix it, and we'll fix it in 6 months. And here's our document. We have a documentation that says we're going to fix it in 6 months. Here's who's going to do it. Here's when it's going to happen. And here are the milestones to fix that. This is just one example that you might have. In my experience, every organization has some type of plan of action and milestone or a document that says, okay, yay, verily, we're going to fix it. Here's who's going to fix it. Here's when they're going to fix it. And we're going to track it every week or every month or whatever. They might not call it a plan of action and milestone. They might call it an action plan or something, but it's part of a risk response. Another one might be acceptance of risk. Acceptance of risk doesn't mean you ignore it. It doesn't mean you're not doing anything. It means you're documenting it and you're finding other ways to mitigate, to lower the level of that weakness, the level of risk that's involved with that. So those are all risk responses. You want to document that at your organizational level. So let's keep going. And I see you guys. I'm not ignoring you, but I'm going to get through a couple of these governance items. And then next week, just so you know, we're going to address the next function, which will be identified in the cybersecurity risk framework. Okay. So lines of communication, also super important. And aside from just email, you might have a Slack, you might have Teams, you might have another way of communicating throughout your organization, but govern covers that piece in the NIST CSF 2.0. A standardized way of categorizing risks. So every organizations do this differently. And what I'm showing you here on the screen is, if you happen to be watching me, is from the CVSS 3.1. And I think they're up to 4 now. But this is a rating, a severity rating that's used throughout the industry to track different levels of risk. So you have informational, which has 0 level of risk. It's just telling you, hey, here's what's going on, all the way up to critical, meaning if somebody exploits this weakness, they can own your admin account and then own your whole network. So a 9 to 10 is pretty bad. But that's not the only severity rating that's out there. You have different ones. Some of them are homegrown, but GV.RM6 is pointing to having a documentation piece, a categorization piece, a calculation, some way of quantifying the level of risk. Really important. You don't have to use this one necessarily. You might have an industry level one that most people use in, say, I don't know, the healthcare sector or something. Most people do use this one though, CVSS. All right. So very quickly, strategic opportunities. We're going to identify positive risks. We're going to balance risk opportunities, integrate strategies. Another one is your roles, responsibilities, and authorities. And this is pretty self-explanatory, but GVRR goes deeply into who the stakeholders, who does what and when, roles, responsibilities, and authorities. So the organization has to define those roles, risks, and responsibilities. Your organizational leadership will define the cybersecurity risks. You're going to document those roles. You might have it to where you have to formally acknowledge each role. Like I know that where I work right now, and actually previous jobs as well, we have to formally be appointed by a information system security manager. A formal letter needs to be signed saying that I'm an information system security officer on such and such a system. And that was the same thing when I worked in NASA, when I worked in DOD. You had to have a formal letter saying, this guy right here, you're documenting the roles, but you're also clearly identifying who does what. And that's one thing I like about the public sector is they're very clear about your roles. Whereas sometimes in the private sector, sometimes they will put you in a pot and then they put a bunch of hats on you and then you're doing like several different things. So one thing I do admire and like about working for whether it was NASA or DOD or wherever is that they were very clear about what your role is. And I actually like that because it makes it so it doesn't muddy the waters. GRR3, adequate resource allocate. This one's very important. This is an ISO 27001. NIST 800 mentions this, but it's making sure that people have the resources they need to do their job. And that also includes training, but it includes making sure that there's enough money to, let's just say what it is. There's enough money to actually do the work for cybersecurity. So that's GVRR 03. Having cybersecurity in HR is super important because things like background checks, things you wouldn't think about, but when you think about it, you're like, oh, okay, obviously we need to have background checks, especially in cybersecurity roles. I have not been in a job in cybersecurity where I didn't have a background check. Even when I work for very small companies, they normally do some kind of background check on me, even if it's like a dime store version of one. Some kind of HR needs to do their due diligence and check up on the people who are working for them, right? That's what that one's all about. Policy. This is one of my favorite ones and one of the most important ones that you see come up throughout the entire NIST CSF is policy. Comprehensive guidance, regularly updated and effectively communicated, distributed throughout the organization Super important. So I'm going to stop right here today, guys, and we'll pick up where we left off next week on this. I'm going to continue this until we're all the way through all this. And just so you know, real soon I've got more stuff coming. It's just taking me a while to put it all together. It's going to include more videos per week, more talks like this about specific things in to get you from point A to point B, getting governance, risk, and compliance in your vocabulary so that you can do this not only in the public space, but in the private space. Knowing governance, risk, and compliance using the NIST CSF as our backbone, actually doing policies, actually doing procedures. I'm going to show you exactly how I do it. But that is something that I'm going to introduce to you very soon. I really appreciate all you guys jumping on here, and I'm going to go to comments right now. Let me see. Who do we have here? Let me see. Okay, don't have that many people on TikTok, but thank you guys for watching anyway. I really appreciate it. I've got some. Could you break down the acronym? Absolutely. Let's start with that one. Can I break down the acronym? So I'm not sure exactly which acronym you're talking about, but I'm going to assume it's governance, risk, and compliance. Governance, risk, and compliance. GRC. GRC stands for specifically governance, risk management, and compliance. And what does that mean? In a nutshell, govern is information management. From the perspective of an IT professional, govern means information management. Now, governance actually is a very broad term in and of itself. If you're talking about govern in finances, you could talk about governing finances, specifically finances. But in perspective of IT, it's information management, information security management specifically. What does that mean? It means making sure that we're doing everything we're supposed to do to make sure that the organization has a specific level of a low level of risk that we have, especially if we're dealing with very important information. If you're dealing with hospital information or whatever, we have to make sure our organization as a whole is doing what they're supposed to do, because this information is going to go in the hands of the nurses, of the CNAs, of orderlies. We have to make sure all the people in the organization is physically protecting that patient information. That's part of governance. So risk management. Risk management is making sure that there is a lower level of we're managing the risk, which means we are limiting the likelihood of getting hacked, getting breached, having data leaked. We are never going to eliminate risk, okay? So that we're not in that game. That's not what we're in this. We're not doing this to eliminate all risk. There's no such thing as that in life. But what we can do is manage it, meaning lower the amount of risk. How do we do that? We do it with CIA, confidentiality, controlling confidentiality, integrity, making sure the data from point A to point B is protected. How we do that with things like encryption. And then availability, making sure that the data is available to people. If you manage CIA, if you can do those things, that will help to manage the risk management. It includes things like doing auditing, doing scans on a regular basis, double checking all our documentation to make sure it's being done properly. All of those things are part of risk management. It's a very broad field, and it get very technical, but that's risk management. Compliance means, if you think about compliance, the best thing you can do is think about an industry. Healthcare industry is what we've been using as an example, so let's stick with that. So healthcare has certain things that they're supposed to do to protect your hospital records. If you're one of those guys that's saying, I don't like compliance, it's making everything more expensive. We're talking about if you go to a hospital and you give them your social security number, that the hospital doesn't go and turn around and sell your information to another hospital so that they can make money off of your information. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about a regulation that's in place to protect your rights and your information. So compliance means regulations, rules in place to protect you, actually also to protect the organization. And retail has its own compliance rules. healthcare, hotel, restaurant management, hospitality has their own rules. The government has their own rules. The private sector has their own rules. If you get a merchant account, you got to do PCI DSS. So it doesn't matter where you are, what part of any industry you're in. Compliance is very important. It's important to protect the organization. Organizations like Oracle, organizations like Microsoft, organizations like, if you care so much about these billionaires, it protects them too. But it also protects your information. That's what it's all about. That's what compliance is all about. All right, let me see what I got here. We'll pick up next week on governance, guys. I'm going to stop there. But Rookie, hey, how you doing? He says, hi, Bruce. Got you early today. Thank you for putting it out this time. Okay. Appreciate you. I'll do that more often to alert everybody that I'm going to do this, because I know I've been doing it at random times. So now I think what I'll do is I'll present early to make sure I can get, because I know you're looking for me at 12 and then I'm starting it at 8, or I'm starting it late or something. So now what I'll do is I'll project it early. I'll give it like a little notice that I'm going to do it so that you guys can be on. Hey, Larry, how you doing? How you guys doing? I appreciate you guys chiming in here. Thank you for all of your support. Appreciate it. Perry says, just did a risk registry this week. Tell us about it. Tell us about your experience with that. I would love to hear that. Wayne says, good afternoon, folks. Mr. Professor Black Ops is in the house. How you doing? Salute to the chat. Larry, okay. Thank you, guys. So, man, the support is amazing, guys. I really appreciate it. We really appreciate you guys. And if you guys didn't know, PBO, Professor Black Ops, is going to be live on Tuesday at 9 Eastern time. So go ahead and check that out. I'll definitely check it out myself. And I've got my first question. Okay. Larry says, let me see. Company's plan of action and milestone based on CVSS 3.1 or something similar. I could just speak on my own personal experience, Larry, and say that it's the plan of action and milestone is based off of a specific weakness. The weakness doesn't have to be technical. Let me explain. So some weaknesses are physical weaknesses. Let's say you had a building and the locks are out of date, or let's say that the building locks aren't up to code, meaning they're out of date and they should update it because it has a known weakness on that door. A physical weakness isn't, as far as I know, doesn't have its own CVSS score. That's going to be something else. So POAM doesn't always have what I'm trying to get at is it's not a POAM doesn't have to be a technical control that's dealing with, I don't know, Adobe or Microsoft or Red Hat or something. It could be a physical control. It can be an environmental control. It can be a personnel. You can have something where the organization doesn't have proper personnel security, and that can be a POAM, a plan of action and milestone, an action plan saying, for those who don't know, so explain the acronyms, a plan of action and milestone is where the organization can't immediately fix, a personnel background check issue. It's going to take us writing a new policy, getting more staff, changing our procedure to do that. All of that's going to take 4 months, 4 to 6 months to do all that whole thing. But we have a plan in place with milestones. We have a plan of action with milestones. And here's who's going to implement it. The CISO is going to start it. And they're going to have a weekly meeting where they start to talk about how we're going to do X, Y, and Z. So that could be a plan of action and milestone that does not have a CVSS score. Now, to answer your question, no, a POAM doesn't always have to have a CVSS score. It's the vulnerabilities, technical vulnerabilities usually have a CVSS score. That said, not all technical controls have CVSS scores, because if you have some random open source freeware that for whatever reason your organization allows on your network, it probably won't have a CVSS score assigned to it. CVSS scores are assigned to popular brands or systems and applications that are very widely used or very popular, like a lot of organizations like OpenSSL, for example. It's used so much throughout throughout many different industries that those guys have their own CVSS. I'm mixing it up with CVEs. They have a CVE that has a CVSS score. So you could assign some kind of CVSS score to it, but not all poems, in my experience, not all poems have an associated CVS. It's vulnerabilities, technical vulnerabilities usually have a CVSS or CVE that's assigned to it. To answer your question, hope that answers it. You could, and you said, or something similar. There's usually some kind of severity, some kind of low, medium, or high. So yes, they usually have something equivalent to it. So great question. Yeah, they're normally like I'll give you a specific example. Like in the past, I've been in an organization where they had a physical security vulnerability, right? And it didn't have a CVS score, but we'll say, okay, we're going to classify this as a medium. We're going to classify this as a moderate. We're going to classify this as a critical control. We got to fix this immediately. They'll assign some kind of severity to it, usually in an organization where they want to. It's really good to have that, because then, okay, do we need to get this done immediately, or can this kind of wait because we have other priorities? Thanks for the question. Let me see here. Other questions here. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it. Let me go to TikTok. I answer a few questions, starting from the top. Let me see here. And just so you guys know, I'm on 4 different platforms, so just bear with me. I know Napkin AI when I see it, LOL. Yeah, I used it to generate some of the images. I've been messing around with different AI to use it to develop some of my, what you saw here in my slide deck was I used something called Gamma.app, which is an AI tool, and then I used some Napkin AI. They've got a limited set of different visuals that you can do on data that I like, so I used a few of those. I saw people get tickets when, okay, let me see. Cybersecurity was expose all you guys do is run scans and make reports. No, that's not true. Cybersecurity, somebody on TikTok says cybersecurity was exposed. All you guys do is run scans and make reports. No, I don't run scans, just so you know. I'm just going to tell you guys the truth. I'm not hiding anything here. I'm telling you the truth. So somebody said all we do is run scans, and no, that's not true. So let me break it down. So at my current job, I don't run scans. I review scans. A whole nother team does scans. Our environment's so huge. I don't have time to run scans. A whole nother team does the scans. Now, I might pull reports from the scan data. It's scanned like automatically, like every so often, right? So we have a scan frequency, and then I'll pull reports based off of my system. Now, the main thing I do is actually write. The main thing I do right now is I'm writing, tracking plan of action and milestones. That's the biggest thing. Probably takes up most of my time right now, because everything's not a one and done type fix. So there's very complex issues in our environment where I'll give you an example. Let's say you have Red Hat and you know that you have to update to the latest Red Hat. But if you update to the latest Red Hat, it's going to break this customized application that you have. What do you do now? If you have a critical vulnerability on Red Hat, right? I'm off the top of my head giving you an example of the types of stuff we have to deal with. And if you update this critical patch, it breaks several other things. Now what? That's my job. And there you go. Magic. Ta-da. No scanning. My last job, let me see. Last job, I was writing policies. That was the main thing I did, policies. The job before that at NASA, I still wasn't running scans. It was a scan team, a vulnerability scan team I had to work with. And mostly I was analyzing vulnerabilities and doing the same stuff I'm doing. The hard part is those little nuances where you don't know what to do. Like off the top of your head, you don't know what to do. Even if you gave the smartest person on earth this issue, they're not going to know what to do immediately. It's like you're given these paradoxes where it's, okay, we have this vulnerability that's, if we don't fix it right now, can get hacked at any minute. But if we fix this, it breaks our main business. It's stuff like that. Those are the main things I deal with on a day-to-day basis. I'm not running scans. I do scan vulnerability. I'm looking at vulnerability. That's a big part of my job, is the vulnerabilities come in and we got to interpret what's going on. And it's not always the same fix action. You know what I mean? So it's different fix actions each time. And that's the stuff you got to deal with. Rookie, thank you for that $10. I appreciate you for funding the Liquid Death Fund. Appreciate it. You and Larry, appreciate you guys. All your support is definitely noticed. And Larry says, will the course you are currently working on be available in full on multiple platforms or just your website? So that's what I'm working through right now, Larry. I'm not sure like how widely available. I'm thinking about doing this one totally different and making it available everywhere, on Udemy, on my own personal website, and I'm just thinking of doing it totally different. And that's why I'm doing this right now. I'm actually showing you the material I'm going to use on the training. And the reason I'm doing that is because it'll be more involved with that. It'll be we're working on stuff together. But the Udemy thing, I might put it there, teachable. Maybe I'll try something different this time, because I really want to get this out there, and I want to do something that works for everyone, for all points. All right, let me see if I got any other questions here. And I know I just explained my job, but it really depends on the organization and what issues they have. If somebody told you that's all we do, then they have not been working. They have not been doing this very long. Let me see. I got another one. Public companies. This is the first time I'm reading these, so bear with me. Some of them are, the way they're written, it's hard for me to. Tito next door says, public companies public companies is where it is, where it's at. Been working with SOCs for several years, and it's fun. Oh, that's awesome, man. I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear more about Sarbanes-Oxley. That's one I have had a lot of exposure to. Man, I hate compliance. Security consulting is peak. Security and compliance people hate to see us coming. Yeah, man. There's a lot of animosity towards IT people and compliance, for sure. There's a lot of animosity. As I've been in this field for some time, it's given me a better perspective. I tend to side with the IT people, the people in the weeds. If they don't want me to do my job, that's a different story. But if they're willing to work with me, normally I feel their pain. So I'm usually on their side, in that I'm like, look, we need to get this done. Let's see how we can do it. And I'm trying to find a middle ground. That's another big part of my job, is speaking the language of the technical guys, and then going ahead and speaking the language of the people who are not so technical. That's a big part of what I do. And Tito next door says, trying to break into GRC with a risk and compliance background. That's awesome. But if you're already doing Sarbanes-Oxley, that's governance, risk, and compliance for the financial sector. Am I right? Is Udemy worth it? Please, is worth it to start up? Yeah, Udemy. I use Udemy all the time. You mean Udemy? I'm assuming you mean to get into a field using Udemy, like to do training. Yeah, man, I use it a lot. I use Udemy. I use, what else? If I find a course from some dude that's on their website, if they've got what I want, I'll I'll buy their course in a heartbeat. These days, like there's some courses I've taken that are better than college online. That's facts. So maybe they don't have the same kind of pull or prestige or something, but if I can get the information from a Udemy course, I just took one on AWS CCP. It was awesome. It was awesome. It told me everything I need to know. It was so effective that now I'm doing Azure 900, AZ 900, and because I took his course, I know some AZ 900 stuff. I'm like, okay, I know what availability zones are. I know what regions are. I know why you need how you have reliability in cloud. So yeah, if you're starting out, I always go with free stuff. People will talk to me about, which is weird, wanting me to give everything away for free, which 99% of stuff I put it out is for free. That's the way you should start on YouTube. That's where I start on YouTube for free. And then I start to get paid. If I will pay somebody to teach me when I see us get a certain level, then I start to pay and invest in myself. Start off for free or for Udemy for cheap, and then go from there, build from there. Hell, start in your own backyard, start in your house on your own home network. Somebody said, get through these questions here. Okay, I'm getting a whole bunch of questions here. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you. I'm going through these as fast as I can. Sarbanes-Oxley, there it is. Okay, another TikTok question from Anthony Crump. He says, let me put your comment up here. Says, I have my IT help desk certifications and I have a few certifications in cybersecurity, but I don't. And then your message cuts off. I don't know how to update my resume so I can get a job in cybersecurity. Okay, let me show you how live. All right, this is my favorite thing to do right here because it's so easy. This is such a huge win to show people how to do this. All right, so number one, what they're looking for is that, let me show you. So everybody thinks that cybersecurity is just hacking or some shit, and it's not just hacking. You don't have to even be super technical, but what you do need to know is basic best security practices. And this is CV. This is one of many places you can go to get the security best practices. And this is really blurry, so just bear with me real quick. I'm trying to get my hands on the actual breakdown of the CVSS. Okay, give me a second here. Give me a second. TikTok's trying to kick me out. There we go. Okay. So what I'm trying to show you guys here is something called the CIS V8. And these are best security practices. And you'll notice things like inventory and control of enterprise assets, inventory and control of software assets. That's a basic inventory. That's if you've ever tracked hardware in your laptops, if you had to track laptops that are being used in your environment, that's what this is. That's what CIS V8 01 and 02 controls are. Tracking the software, tracking the hardware. What tools did you use to do that? Did you have an asset management tool to do that? You need to list that on your resume. Are you using Exonius? Are you using the latest and greatest asset management tool? You need to annotate that on your resume. Another one is data protection, obviously. Encryption of data at rest. Did you use BitLocker? Did you use whatever flavor of the day encryption on your network? Did you have your organization use VPN? Did you set up the VPN? What VPN did you use? That needs to be on your resume. Another one is secure configuration and enterprise assets and software. Were you involved with the configuration, the overall configuration of your system? Do you do STIGs? If you're involved in that process, you need to list it. Account management. There's things on here you would expect to see: access control management, vulnerability management, right? But maybe you wouldn't expect to see something like, I don't know, network monitoring. That's a big one. Continuous monitoring is a big one. You need to annotate these things on your resume. These things need to be on your resume. And let me show you how to find the keywords for this, because these have keywords. Now, what I'm going to do, you can follow along with me. I'm going to go to LinkedIn. I do this almost every week. This is my real stuff right here. This is what really gets me jobs. This really works. It's not even the best one. I'm not the smartest tool in the shed. If I can do it, you can do it. I'm a high school dropout. If I can do this, you can do it. All right. Look, it's not about brains, guys. It's about leverage. It's about where you apply the energy. And I'm telling you how to do this. What I have here is keywords for my specialty. You got to find these keywords here. I took all my best keywords and I put them right on top. My best stuff is right on top. And I need to update this because I got some more stuff to put in here. But if you go through my resume, if you go through my experiences, you'll see more keywords. You want to grab these keywords. This is what technical recruiters are looking for. If you don't have this stuff in your resume, it's going to be hard to find you. You need to make it easy for them to find you. Here's another thing you can do. Let's say you don't align with what I do. Let's say you want to go into GRC for healthcare or something. GRC healthcare. Watch this. This is magic. Watch. Check this out. So now, I just typed this in, right? I put I'm in Indeed. I'm in LinkedIn. Sorry. I'm in LinkedIn right now. I typed in GRC healthcare. You can do this for whatever keyword, whatever you're trying to get into. Type that and then go to people. And then what we're going to do right now is steal. This is called stealing, guys. Check this out. Now look at this. These people here, these are the top MFs in this field. These are the top. But you know why I know? You know how I know that? It's because they came up number 1 in the world on LinkedIn. On planet Earth, these people are the top for this. Now, it is there. You got to take into account is probably looking at my particular algorithm or something. But the thing is, if you type this in, you're going to see some of these people number 1. Now, what do we do with this? We're going to take these number 1 people, and they're going to be our mentors. We're going to take this young lady right here. She's a GRC analyst, and we're going to look at her resume. She is our mentor because she's a badass. Look at what she has. This is why she's a badass. Look at this. Let me show you this. You see this? See what I'm looking at here? You see here. These are keywords you need to have on your resume. Steal. Steal this. This is it. She has unlocked the keys to your destiny. Look at this. Look at this badass right here. Look at this. This is why she's number 1 right here. She has keywords in here for GRC healthcare. I guarantee you, people from all over the United States who are looking for GRC healthcare people are seeing this young lady right here because she's a badass. That's how you do it. That's how you do it right there. If you look at what I just showed you right there, and I apologize, I didn't have my screen. I wasn't showing my screen. We can't see. Don't waste time. Okay, let me do it again. All right. I wasn't sharing my screen on YouTube, so let's fix that. Okay. Here I am on YouTube. What I did first was I went to my resume first. All right. But let me save some time, and I just typed in, I'm on LinkedIn. You can type in GRC healthcare, but it could be whatever. It can be Sarbanes-Oxley. It could be, I don't know, pick your poison. It could be, you want to be a SOC analyst. You want to be a pen tester, whatever. Put it in here. Then search for people, because you don't have to search for people. You can be posts, it could be products, it could be jobs, right? People. That's what you want. Go to people. And then we're going to look at all of these people. These are all top people. Top people. I know this because they're coming up number 1 on LinkedIn under people. So people all over planet Earth are seeing these same people under the search. There are factors like it's taken into account my algorithm because LinkedIn has its own algorithm. So of course it's taking into account that I live in the US, that I'm a GRC person, whatever. It's going to be a little bit skewed to my particular searches. But that said, still people all over the United States is going to see this person. These people are now going to be our mentor because we're going to look at their resume. We're going to take this first one right here, this GRC badass GRC analyst for healthcare. And we're going to look at her about page. Look at this is why she's a badass right here. This is what I was showing people on TikTok. She's got all the keywords. If you read through this, you can see it's well written, and then she sneaks in all of these awesome keywords here. That's what you got to do for your resume. This is how you do it. This right here is how you do it. She's doing it. See how she has these keywords here for her profile? This is the kind of stuff you want to have on your resume and your profile, by the way. She's a badass. That's how you do it. And you can do this for any kind of search. I'm not telling you to lie on your resume, guys. That's not what I'm doing. What I'm telling you to do is word it, the things that you have done, word them using the language that the recruiters are looking for. Is this a changing job market? Yes. Or is it harder to find jobs? It depends on what industry you're looking in. It really depends on what industry. Right now, what happens with the news is they look at the stocks, like they look at Google and they look at FANG. They look at Facebook, Meta, Apple, I don't know, Netflix, shit like that. But there's a whole world outside of the stock market. There's a whole world outside of that, and they're always looking for people. Is it hard right now? This is a more difficult market, I would say, especially in the gov tech space. It's a little bit because obviously what's going on, right? There's so much bullshit going on right now. It is harder to find jobs. And I ain't going to lie to you, but are they there? Yes, they're looking for you right now. Right now, somebody's looking for you, your skills. You got to advertise yourself. You got to put yourself out there. So there you go. Thank you guys for that. Sorry about that. I didn't have that screen on, but let me answer some more questions here. Let me see here. Answering more questions. Poem comes after the identified weak. Yeah, exactly. You have to identify the weakness, and then the poem comes to address that. Rookie says, is actually the physical security, visitor log, and data center policy control. Yeah. Of course, okay, I already answered that one. And I'm thinking, what do you guys think? Should I just put it everywhere? Should I put it Udemy? Of course. Even though I'm asking myself this question, I'm thinking, yeah, it should be everywhere. Wayne says, how do you both when consulting and you have IT resisting? Okay, I'm not understanding how you wrote this, but let me try. How do you do both? That's what you're saying. Okay. They want software apps to run at the fullest features, but sound the days of the past because full features comes with issues. Okay, I think I know where you're coming from. You have an organization that wants full features of this app that they're trying to do is going to have all kinds of issues. This is the challenge right here. That's what you're being paid for, to figure that out. And what I normally do is I got to gather all the details of what's going on. First thing I need to do is talk to all those stakeholders, all the smart people who have been doing this for a while, your system admins, right? If it's a commercial off-the-shelf product, or if it's the developers, talk to them, see what's the landscape, because maybe you can get away with having more features if the system's is air gapped, meaning it doesn't connect to the internet or something. You might be able to do more stuff for them. But the thing is, you have to have the buy-in from leadership. The governance piece has to be thought about, because maybe they don't want to pay for all those features. Maybe they don't want to take that risk. They have to get buy-in from the heads of agency, from the organization, from the leadership. Everybody has to be involved with it, all stakeholders, to figure out if we can put those features in there. Because sometimes you'll be able to get away with it if there's certain things that are met. It really depends. That's why somebody on TikTok says all we do as cybersecurity people is run scans. And that's a real limited view of cybersecurity, of extremely limited view of cybersecurity. That's not all we do. It's a very broad field. If you want to get into breaking up. There's, okay, these guys are information security guys as opposed to cybersecurity guys. And even then, that's still a very narrow idea of what we do. I would say your question about what do you do in a situation where the customer wants everything but wants absolute security too, that's our job right there. That question right there, that's where it gets difficult. That's where it's harder to replace that with AI. If you give it all these different parameters, it can help, but cybersecurity is largely still a human problem. So I think it's a huge help. I'm excited about it. I'm very excited about it, but I don't think it's a good replacement for what we're doing because it's a human problem still. Once it's no longer a human problem, then I guess you can get rid of all humans. And that's a possibility. Okay, let me see. Okay, got another question. Rue says, what website should someone apply if they are trying to be an intern? No experience, no certs. I can show you a couple places that I would try. So here I am on LinkedIn. Let me show my screen here on YouTube so I can get everybody involved with this conversation. Here's what I would do if I had no experience and I was trying to do internship. You could do this. You could, let's look in this one. I don't know if we'd be able to do this one because this will show us something very interesting. We're going to go to jobs. So I'm still searching for GRC healthcare. Now, the issue with this right here is this is a very specialized job. This is not something everybody can do, and it's dealing with sensitive information. So we might not find anything with this. This is probably not the one you want to. I'll type in something you should use, but let's just start with this for now. Now I'm going to go to experience level. And then we're going to type in internship, entry level, and let's stick with that. So this is one thing. You can do this on Monster, on Dice, on Indeed. They all have some kind of filter feature that you do this. And you'll notice it only has one result. So that's why you don't want to type in specialization. But it does have one. It's in Florida. But there you go. That's what you could do. You want to do something like this. Here's what you want to do. If you're new to this, you want to go help desk. This is just one. Look, it's showing you other things you can type. Help desk specialist, help desk analyst, help desk technician. But let's try also technical, if I can spell, assistant, technical associate, technical assistant, technical asset manager. See that? Let's just say technical. We want to keep it broad because if you're a beginner, you got to start with the fundamentals. So here we are, experience level. We're going to filter by internship or entry level, and it has more jobs. Now it's 2,500 jobs all across the country. Look at that. Some of these are even hybrid and remote jobs, by the way. Most of them are going to be on-site jobs, but you can do this same thing I just did on Dice, Monster. Those are the best technical job search sites, by the way. That's why I keep mentioning those. Those are the ones I use on a regular basis. Let's try help desk. You can try help desk. And then once again, we're searching all jobs. There's only 270, which is not very many in the United States. But yeah, here you go again. There are jobs out there. It's going to be local. It's 9 times out of 10, not going to pay a whole bunch of money. But you got to start somewhere. And this is how you get your foot in the door. If you're really trying to get in this field, then that's the kind of mentality you want to have. Is it, listen, I really want to get my foot in the door. This is serious. If you want to be a doctor, you don't go straight into the emergency room and start operating on brains, right? You have to start from the beginning. That's how it works. Let me see here. It says just asking. Okay, let me see here. I'm going to answer some more TikTok questions here. I got 19 people watching me. I appreciate you guys on TikTok. I got a lot of questions here, so just bear with me. I know I'm long-winded, but these are not like yes or no type questions. What framework? Okay, Stefan, I think it is. ask, what framework are you working on? The one that I was just teaching was the NIST CSF cybersecurity framework. I do use that at my current job. We use it to help to evaluate the priorities of certain vulnerabilities we have. But in the previous jobs I've worked, we also used it to map other frameworks. The main one I'm using right now is NIST 800, NIST Risk Management 800, 837, 853 are the main ones that I use at my current job, and the main one I've used at my last 2 or 3 jobs. That said, I have had exposure to PCI DSS. We used that one at the last organization I worked at a little bit for certain clients. And then I've also worked on with SOC, FedRAMP, which is basically NIST 853. And then some other ones have come up from time to time. HIPAA or something has come up. I don't have a lot. ISO 27001 has come up a couple times and a couple other ones. So main one for me is NIST 800 and NIST CSF, but I do have exposure to some of the other ones. Oh, let me see here. How do I update my resume so I can get a job in cybersecurity? Okay, so I talked about this one, but I can briefly go over this. So what I would do if I were you, if you have any kind of, first of all, let me just tell you, cybersecurity, GRC is specialized. All right. Meaning it's like you're not just a doctor, you are a anesthesiologist. You know what I mean? That's probably not a good example. You're not just a doctor, you're a brain doctor, right? It's like a specialization of a field. It's a specialization within a specialization. So if you want to get in, but what you can do, if you have IT experience, what you want to do is you want to look at this right here. This right here is going to give you an idea of what the kind of things you want to put on your resume. Have you done inventory and control, inventory of assets, inventory of software? And that's what I mean by that is what's the skills you have to do that? What's your experience level with it? What tool did you use to do this? Those need to be on there. Data protection, account management, access control what tools did you use to do this, and what did you do to do audit log management? What did you do in these things? These are all best security practices. This is coming from the CIS V8. But if you can do these right here, this is what they're looking for. This is what recruiters are looking for. And what I would do if I were you, if you are already in help desk, if you are just trying to transition to cybersecurity, you can do this. Cybersecurity, do like this right here. And let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of these 2 filters here because we want to broaden it out and look for jobs. And check this out. This might be a little too broad, but let's look anyway. Level 2 technician. What we're doing here is looking at the individual. What we're doing here is looking at the actual job requirements of these positions, and it's not scrolling for some reason. I don't know why, but let's go to this next one. I was a director. We don't want that one. We want payroll coordinator. No. Payroll. This is really broad. Okay, I'm not going to use this one. I'm going to say cybersecurity analyst. Let's do search. All right. So search the job you want. All right. Cybersecurity analyst is what I chose. Now let's go to this one. And now what I want to do is look at the job description. The job description is going to give you an idea of what organizations are looking for. The description is what you want to pay attention to figure out what to put on your resume. Another thing you want to do is look at people. This is going to be one of the greatest tells. You go through their profiles. The top people are going to be their top 20 people are going to be some of the best stuff that you can get. It's telling you what certifications they have. It's telling you what kind of frameworks they're using. It's telling you what kind of language they use on their profile. Really good stuff that's going to help you to identify what you should put on your resume. You can also download my resume. It's still free. If you go to ConvoCourses.com, look for free stuff, look for my resume. It's downloadable, and it'll have an ATS style resume that has an example of, I'm not telling you to copy and paste my resume. What I want you to do is look through how I'm wording things. Look how it's not even a great resume, but it's getting me jobs to this day for 7 years straight. I got to be doing something right. And now it's free. Anyway, Larry, thank you for that $20. I appreciate you. He said, here's Doge again. Oh my Lord. I really don't want to talk about it. All right, Larry. Okay. Thank you for the 20 though. He says, I read the Doge approach to government cuts and other changes are directly from their private sector playbook. In your experience, is it advisable to use public sector policy in private sector environments and vice versa? This is something I've been thinking about a lot. And the reason why Doge keeps coming up, Department of Government Efficiency, run quote unquote by Elon Musk, maybe, or whatever the hell's going on, without transparency, fake transparency, I should say. I have some feelings about it. Okay, that's why I want to talk about it. The reason why it keeps coming up is because it directly affects my sector, which is government, GovTech. I've been doing government for a long time, and to see this happen, this is the first time I've seen anything like this. It's extraordinarily destructive on multiple levels, and mainly the conflict of interest is probably the most glaring thing everybody can see right in front of their eyes and saying nothing about it, which blows my mind. That's just one of many things that are a problem with what's going on with Doge. Glaring problems. Kind of like for years, they've been telling us what not to do, and then they're now doing it. Just what the hell's going on? But to answer your question was, is it advisable for the public sector policy and private sector to can you do one versus the other? They're cutting jobs. So what Larry is saying is the playbook seems to be what Elon has done at his companies. Taking Twitter as an example. So what he did with Twitter when he bought it, he came in and he immediately cut like half the staff, right? He cut half the staff, and the idea was he wants to make profit to do more with less. It's his private company. He can do whatever the hell he wants, right? He could take the whole infrastructure and run it in Russia. He could make it open source and give all the passwords to China. It's a private company. He can do whatever the hell he wants with it. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, if he wants to blow up rockets over Florida over and over again, it's a private company, right? He can do whatever the hell he wants with a private company. The problem with a public organization is that he's dealing with my information. Now it's different. You're dealing with my stuff. My livelihood is now affected by what you're doing. It's different. The big difference between having worked in public and private sector, in the public sector, the military, intelligence, I don't know, driver's license, right? All of those are public sector. What you're doing is you work for the people. That is who you work for. The tax dollars come in, it pays you to work to help maintain the infrastructure, maintain Social Security, maintain the military, maintain identification, maintain healthcare, whatever have you. Like, you're supposed to work for us, the people, not for your personal gain. That's the big difference. A private sector does something for a private entity so that private stakeholders can make money providing value to people. And if you don't want to buy it, you don't have to. They can have a certain level of control over their property, over their IP, right? And the laws are designed to protect them so that you can't just copy their stuff and then do the same thing they're doing, right? There's laws already in their favor to protect them. It's very different. And some of the big differences is that it's supposed to be that the public sector has way more oversight. And people from the outside, people who don't see the inner workings of the public sector, they take it for granted. They take us for granted who work for them. They don't deal with the stuff we have to deal with. The level of oversight so that it protects your information, the level of oversight is expensive because that transparency, that oversight is coming from 3 branches of government. It's coming from the executive, the legislative, and the judicial. And it's coming, and if you're at a local level, it's still coming from those 3 branches. So it's a lot of oversight. And that's for your own protection because we're working for you. What they're doing right now is they're just doing whatever the hell they want. And it doesn't seem to have oversight. It doesn't seem, or it's given like fake oversight because there's a website that has receipts, but then the receipts are wrong. No, you can't. To answer your question, there's certain things that the public sector does that's very different from the private sector. Having worked in both, there's a level of oversight that's absolutely necessary in the public sector because people's lives are at stake. Not just military people doing secret operations and their life is at stake. I'm talking about your life is at stake. Your livelihood, who pays taxes into this system, is at stake. We have to protect your information to the best extent of the law. And that's why transparency is important. That's why representatives vote on certain things to make those things happen locally, at a state level, and at the federal level. All of those things are coming into play to make this all work. And so far, it has worked. Has it been the best? No. Do some things suck? Yes. But private sector don't have to. It's a private entity. If a private entity makes this cup, they don't have to go to the judicial branch or the legislative branch or the executive branch to say what goes on the cup. They can do whatever the fuck they want to do. Does that make sense? That's what they're trying to do to the U.S. government. And that's not going to help everybody. I can tell you right now, it's not at the service. Even if you like what they're doing now, just imagine if somebody else gets into office who you don't agree with and they have their own Doge. Let's say they have a woke Doge. What's going to happen then? What happens when they have a woke Doge? Are you going to like that? Is that going to be cool with you that they just go past the legislative branch and do whatever the hell they want because they feel like it? Okay. Anyway, off my soapbox. I know I'm going to lose a whole bunch of readers for that one. I'm going to be punished for those words. For sure. The punishment is coming. It's going to be swift. Okay. Let me see. More questions on TikTok. Thanks for that question, Larry. Thanks for the $20. I appreciate you. I have an IT help desk certification, and I have a few certifications, cybersecurity. But okay, I already read that one. Okay, let me go to the bottom of this. Oh man. Oh man, sorry guys. I'm gonna get some hate for that one. Never have an opinion on these things, man. That doesn't work for everybody. How do you feel about adversary emulation tools? That's not my expertise, and I know what I believe you're talking about pen testing, things like Kali Linux and those kinds of tools. They're really cool, but that's not what I do, so I can't really speak on it. Not going to pretend to be smart on it because I'm definitely not. Somebody said I have an assignment on upcoming. I have an assignment that's upcoming with an incident response plan. How can I get resources to help? There's a couple of great resources out there. One of my favorites for writing documents, an easy one will be AI, but there's another one called SANS. The SANS organization has a great incident response. Off just the top of my head, incident response plan. I'm just on Google. I'm typing in incident response plan, SANS org incident response plan. And then I'm going to go here. And then there's Splunk. Okay, these are some paid ones. Skip the sponsored ones. And then they have this white paper on incident response that might be helpful. And then they have, let me see, they have a template. That's the one I'm looking for. They used to have a template out there that was really good. Yeah. Looks like they've updated it to where I'm not finding it. But there's a bunch of templates. One thing you can do is just find templates. There's one on sans.org. There's another one on FedRAMP. And there's another one. NIST also has some great templates. You can also generate these off of, there's so many options for you. You can also download them off my site. If you go to ConvoCourses.com, go there, search for my free stuff. I have free downloadables that is already grabbed, because what they'll do, what these awesome sites do, is they'll put it out there for a couple years and then it'll be gone. They'll change it or get rid of it or something. I grab it and I put it on my website. So I believe I have an incident response plan that you can check out on my downloadables, but just go check it out. There's a couple different things you can do to help you out. But you're going to have to take some time to actually massage it to make it look more like your organization's brand. But there's so many different templates out there that'll help you out to get that done. And that's what I would do if I were you. Let me see if I can find a real good example for you to use here. Let me see. Bear with me. Watch this. Let me blow your mind real quick. Here's another thing you can do. Make sure I'm sharing my screen over here. Bear with me here, guys, for a second. Do some little magic here. All right, watch this. Here's another thing you can do. I'm on ChatGPT. Incident response plan for NIST CSF 2.0. This is not always perfect. Sometimes it'll get it wrong. What it normally does with NIST CSF is it uses NIST CSF 1.0, and you got to check the information because sometimes it'll hallucinate and make shit up. But what you can do is start off with this. Make a good start. And you can also do this with Gemini, which is Google's implementation of this, and then you can do it with Claude, Anthropic's. But watch this. So this is ChatGPT using ChatGPT 4.5. I think they just came out with a new one. Yeah, so there's the introduction. It has the scope, a purpose, roles, and it looks like it's using CSF 2.0. I'm not sure if this is accurate. You'd have to read through it. I would definitely read through it. Mine is pretty verbose because I've been using this for my own research. So I've got a bunch of stuff already loaded in here. Maybe that's why it's so accurate. But yeah, there's a template. You could grab this and then post this to Word and then massage that to make it work for you. And that's it. This has all the main things that you would want to see in an incident response plan. You definitely want to check out some of these categories. You'd probably, I don't know if you're using which flavor of framework you're using, but I could have easily said, make me one for, look, watch this. Now make one for, okay, somebody requested ISO 27000. ISO 27, ISO, what is that? 27035. Okay, let's try that. ISO 27000. Oh, it's using 2023 version. Look at that. Purpose, scope. It's got the roles and responsibilities in there. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 4, 3 and 4. Containment, eradication, recovery, dope. Nice. Fire emoji. It's pretty dope. And then I could say, this is good. Align with ISO. Let's do something hard. Align with NIST 800 -53. I don't know what this is going to do. Now, look, it's aligning it with NIST 853. Incident response plan, NIST 853 Rev 5, IR 1 through 9. Holy shit. That's crazy. Look at this. Mind blowing. Look at this. It's citing each one of the controls. Amazing. Amazing. Instantly. You still think you're going to have your job in 5 years, Mr. Tech Woke? I'm joking. Yeah, anyway, it's fire. So it's amazing. It's been blowing my mind. It's really cool to use. If you can use it at your job, use it learn as much as possible, and try to use as many of these new tools as possible to help you out in your job and your business and whatever. That's what I've been doing, learning as much as possible. And let me see, any other questions here? Thank you for that, security expert. Appreciate you. Let me see if I have any more questions here. Wow. Yeah, wow is right. Like, if you're not on AI, like, you need to get on it. It's unbelievable. It's shockingly good. And it's getting better and better by the week. It's terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. It's real. It's like sci-fi is happening before our very eyes. It's amazing to see, but also terrifying. But I say, if you can't beat them, join them. Let me see here. Rue says, is the trifecta needed for cybersecurity, and can one just do the security plus learn some software like Linux? Yeah, you don't absolutely need to try the trifecta. Trifecta meaning CompTIA A plus, Network plus, and the Security plus. You don't absolutely need them. Some organizations are not big on certifications, to be honest with you. One thing that's going to win every time is going to be experience. So the more experience you can get, the better. And I know that's easier said than done, but you can do it. Like, you can do projects on your home network, right? I'm not saying that you're going to instantly get a job from doing home network labs or something, but any kind of experience you can use, especially what I always encourage people to do is go lateral. If you already work in Walmart, try to get into Walmart's IT department while you're doing your projects at home. Experience is what you really want to focus on. Get the cert. Security Plus is fire. Get that one. But the experience is really what's going to sell you. Do a lateral change if you happen to be a teacher. You're trying to go to the IT department and try to work there. Do your own projects. Get hands-on fixing laptops. Get hands-on fixing servers if you can. That experience is worth its weight in gold. That is where you really want to go, is experience. Focus on experience. Get the certs. That's cool. Get your degree. That's cool. But the experience is really what's gonna get you there. And I've been talking for almost 2 hours, guys, so I'm going to take a couple more questions. We will pick up where we left off this week on govern and get into an identify function. And just stay tuned. I've got more stuff coming. I got a ton of stuff coming as far as the GRC roadmap NIST CSF is concerned and starting up a group and all that kind of stuff. Stay tuned. I got lots of stuff coming. Resilience said, SAN policy templates work like a gym. That's what I was actually looking for, and I couldn't find it. SANS, if you can find it, it's better than AI. AI is dope. Don't get me wrong, but the templates is coming from cybersecurity people in the field. So basically, you could take that template and massage that to what you need right now, immediately. So actually, those, if you could find those SANS policy templates, they're better than AI. And he says, I use them to write my policies in my college courses. Yeah, and then you could tailor it to whatever you need. Yeah, that's exactly right. And then Larry says, so from a governance standpoint, an organization having a non-standard approach seems to have a direct impact on the risk aspect of policy implementation. It's all tied together. That's exactly, you're getting it. So governance, risk, and compliance are all tied together, and you can't really decouple them without taking the power away from another. For example, govern is the people who have to establish the policy. The policy is supposed to help manage the risk, because if you have a well-written policy that's distributed and communicated throughout the organization, now everybody has it in their hand and they know what the policy is. Now, do they implement it? That's where you go a step further and you implement the security features within your organization. You make it so they have to use things like multi-factor authentication. You make it so that every system is logging, doing authentication logs, audit logs, sorry. So it all ties together, but the backing, the govern is the backing, the full chest throat backing of the actual management. So all of them are tied together in this bow. And if you don't have one, it's really hard to do the other. I've been in places where they hired me to do policy and then I had no backing from management. And you know how hard it is to get stuff done if you have no backing from management? They don't have a backbone and won't say, hey, you have to do this, but I'm telling them to do it. And then that's what makes the hate happen, because this IT department has to set up this server. And then I'm telling them, hey, you have to spend 80 more hours to put all these security controls. And oh, by the way, it might break some of the main features, but I don't have the backing of the management or CEOs or director or whoever. It's really hard to do that. It's really hard. It's, in fact, they'll just do whatever the hell they want. They're like, you're not the boss of me. I'm going to do whatever the hell I want. And then it gets put out, and then they have to do it anyway because they get in trouble because we had an audit. So yeah, they all tie together. Governance ties into risk management, ties into compliance. So think about it like this. To make the policy, they have to reach into their compliance bag. If you're in retail and you are trying to make a security policy, you need to make sure that PCI DSS, a policy, a regulation, is in that policy. That regulation has to be cited and used in that policy. It all ties together. Great insight. Great question. Great comment. He says, more to my point is that HIPAA, PCI DSS, NIST CSF all exist because they address nuances different in specific sectors. So to me, taking a one size fits all approach isn't advisable. Exactly. You got it. In the beginning, for our learning purposes, we are looking at the big picture. Like, we're looking at, okay, what does govern mean? We're looking at what is risk management and compliance. The idea of it is we're wrapping our head around it. But once you get into the field in the GovTech space, you're not going to do all the same things in the GovTech space that you obviously in the retail space. So you got it. The nuances of the retail space is going to be pretty different from the things that the GovTech focuses on. They focus on different things. They're doing many of the main best practices. So the awesome thing about GRC is that if you know the importance of govern, if compliance, if risk management, and some of the tools and some of the methodologies, when you go from one industry to another, you're like, oh, okay, I see what they're doing here. Or, hey, why don't you guys have this type? We used this type of multi-factor authentication at our organization. You guys are using this other one. Why don't you guys do this other thing here? It just, you start to see, once you get the gist of what's supposed to happen, it gets easier to go from one industry to the next. As a matter of fact, a lot of times I'm sought after. If you're in the government sector specifically, sometimes you're sought after because they have such a heavy-handed approach to policy. When you go to somewhere in the private sector that doesn't, you're sought after because they want that kind of mindset of taking cybersecurity very seriously and policy very seriously, because they don't really have that in the private sector as much. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. They are different. They focus on different things, I should say. They all have pretty much the same best security practices, but they'll focus really hard on one thing rather than another, is what I've noticed. Let me see here. Can you give examples of how controls? Okay. DC says, can you give examples of how a control can fail and how a CSA would go about determining a recommended fix to notate in a POAM? This is a good question. Can you give an example of how a control can fail? Okay. And then how would you go about? Okay, I see what you mean. So I'll give you a specific example. How can it fail? How can a control fail? A failed control would be, let's start with the policy. So an organization's policy, as an assessor, a CSA, security control assessor, a lot of times what we're doing is we're looking at the policy. We're saying, okay, let me see your policy. All right, now I see what you're supposed to do. And then what framework are you using? All right, here is the expected results of a specific control. A specific control would be SSI2, flaw remediation. That's from NIST 800. Flaw remediation is a fancy word for did you fix the patches? Is one. That's just one. Did you patch Windows 10 or whatever? And if they didn't, that it's a violation of SI2. If it's even worse, if they don't have a method or a process of fixing that particular patch. So an example of failing the control would be they didn't patch a certain control, and it stands out because it's a critical control. Let's say it's a critical Active Directory control, like this server, this Active Directory system that controls all of the identification and authentication throughout the network is broken. It's not, it's supposed to be patched, and it's not. And it's a critical control. And it's coming up on 5 different servers. You would run a scan as an assessor, as a security control assessor, and you'd see, I noticed they don't have this patch. It's a critical control. And then you would present that. That would be on your list of things, probably be like number 1. And it would say you failed SI2 on 5 different systems. These servers, it'll have the IP, the host name, the fully qualified host name. It'll have the actual CVE of the failed control. It would have the CVSS of what level of severity. Let's say it was critical. It would have all that information, and then it would have a recommendation on how to fix it. The recommendation would be you need X, Y, and Z patch. That would be an example of a failed control. By no means the only type. There's many hundreds of different types. Like I said, they don't have to be technical. It can be physical controls, it can be operational control, management, all kinds of stuff. But let's stick with this one. So that would be an example of a failed control. It's mapped directly to a specific control in the NIST 853. You could also have the same thing mapped to a CIS control family or a ISO 27000 family. I think it's ISO 27002. They have their own family controls. You could map it to that. The point is you could map it to all these different control sets of controls, but let's stick with NIST 853. That is an example. And then your other part of the question would be how an assessor, an SCA, security control assessor, would go about determining a recommended fix to annotate. Okay, you would normally get the recommended fixes from the actual vendor. And in this case, we said it was Active Directory. So it'd be Microsoft. So we would get the recommended fix from Microsoft, or from a lot of times the scanner itself will pull that recommended fix action from the vendor, but it comes from the vendor. The vendor would say, in the patching situation, you would go to the vendor. It would have, okay, you need a patch with X, Y, and Z version of this software, and then here's where you can grab the patch from. It would be that. You would just get it from the vendor, and then you would that would be a part of the POAM. You, as an assessor, the security control assessor, are not making the POAM, by the way. That would be the actual cybersecurity professional, the information system security officer, or the GRC analyst, or whatever, whoever's in that role. That person would then make the POAM. You would make the you would tell them, you'd clearly identify what systems have the weakness, what to fix, the recommended fix action, when you found it, who found it, all that kind of stuff, from what scanner you used, all that. Then they would be the ones to take it and say, okay, we'll remediate it. They might even need a POAM. If they can remediate it on the spot, or fix it on the spot, don't need a POAM. But if they know, okay, we know there's 1,000 people who have to use this, and we can only do it on the weekends, and it breaks these other things, we can't do it for another 2 months. Now you're going to do a plan of action and milestone. So I hope that answers your question. That's the process and the big picture of all that stuff. Let me see here. Oh, man. Yep, those entry-level jobs have become exponentially more difficult to get. Yeah. AI has already altered the entry-level tech landscape. You have to show up at the interviews now with a hands-on lab experience in fundamentals application that is difficult to automate. Everything's changing right now. The landscape is changing very rapidly. I cannot say how much of this is true or false, but I will say I can see it changing before my very eyes. I just case in point, and I'll present this. I'll show you guys when I have more information, but I started using AI resume, an AI called Use Massive. I know I talked about this on a couple other ones, and I put my stuff out there and it immediately gave me an interview. It says, okay, tell me when you're available for an interview. Okay, let me explain. I put my resume in there. It found the jobs for me. It applied for the jobs for me. And then it says, here's your interview. It's called usemassive.com. So try that. Yeah, try it. Larry says, thanks for the stream. Sorry, I have to step away for a sensitive topic. Not intentional, and don't want to sabotage your stream. Just speaking to my environment. No, I love it, man. I love the conversation. I try to avoid it, but I really want to talk about it, but I know how passionate I am about it. So I know how divisive it is. And I try to come from a place of a solution rather than a problem. And I don't right now with this one with Doge and all the stuff going on. I don't have a solution right now. Hang in there, Larry, man. Thank you for coming, man. Thank you for all your donations. Really appreciate you. Got something special coming to you. Failed control identified by the SCA is in the report, and then the analyst creates the POAM if it needs to be. Yes, that's absolutely right. That's right. That's correct. So Resilience says the failed controls identified by the SCA, Security Control Assessor, or the auditor, or whatever you want to call them. Then they put it in their report. And then it's the analyst, aka the information system security officer, aka cybersecurity specialist, wherever their role name is. They write the POAM, plan of action and milestone, or action plan. And then if they need to, because sometimes they don't need to, sometimes they can just fix the issue, and then they're done. Okay, let me see if I have any other questions on TikTok. Thank you guys for watching. I got a few people watching me, so thank you so much for your questions. Thanks for the diamonds, for the roses, everything. Really appreciate you. This is why I do it. And let me see. Somebody, Steve says, let me post your comment here. It says, how difficult is it to get into how difficult is it to get into after retiring from law enforcement digital forensics? So I would ask how long ago you did it, because that's going to be a factor, but you're on the right track. That's really good. And I also come from a law enforcement background, and there's some parallels to IT, cybersecurity, and specifically with law enforcement and physical security. So things like chain of custody, things like physical security is a huge part of it. And then forensics, obviously, digital forensics is its own specialization within cybersecurity. So my first question to you would be, how long ago were you doing it? And then what I would do if I wanted to get back into this world is I would cite all of my experience from the past, and then I would get smart on what they're currently doing in the field. Because I would think that your skill set is still very valuable. For example, like I've been out of cybersecurity analyst work for some time now. It's been like 6 years, 8 years, something like that. But I'm familiar with it enough to where I could pick it up very quickly. And I know what I'm looking at if I'm looking at logs or something like that. I know that they're using different tools now. Like the tools I was super smart on was ArcSight, the SIEM tool, or the Security Information Event Manager. Now, ArcSight's not even the top 3, top 10. It's not top 20. So now what they're using is like Splunk or whatever. So what I would do now if I wanted to get into that space is I would get smarter on what the current tool is. The current tool is Splunk, and followed by a couple other ones. And I could download Splunk, use it, get very familiar with it, get a cert in it or whatever. And then I would put my resume out there. I would definitely talk about my skills with Splunk after doing a bunch of projects with it, and other tools, other current tools that are being used. I would get I would get myself up to speed on all of the basics of cybersecurity analyst work, network forensics, and I don't know, FTK, whatever the hell they're using these days. I'd get smart on those. I'd list those as skills, list those tools, and then I would cite all of my past experience, and then I would go for a job in the space. And then when I got in the interview, I would be very frank with them. I'd be like, I haven't used it in 6 years. I actually have used X, Y, and Z recently on projects, but my experience goes back to the year 2015 or whatever the case may be. So you could get back into it. They need people who are skilled. That's the hardest piece about cybersecurity jobs, is that they're looking for people with that background, with the skill set, who are trusted. It's hard to find. It's hard to find it. And that's why we're always behind on, there's always a gap. For the last 7 years, actually, since I've been doing this, there's been a gap, because they can't find the people who want to do it, or who have the skills to do it, or who are trusted, those things. And you happen to have 2 out of the 3. You're trusted. You've done this for a long time. You have a background in it, and you have the experience. You just need to polish up your skills and then get yourself back in there. They're looking for people who they can trust. You could also get into something like project manager, and then get back into the space while you're getting smart on all the current things they're using, the current tools they're using. So you could do it. You could do it. 100% think you could do it. In case, and come on, man. Why are you asking me this, Steve? Come on, man. If that's what you can do, then you could put that shit on your resume right now. You'd be back in case and FTK. Are you trying to say you're trying to get into GRC? You could. You're overqualified, to be honest with you. They probably pay you more to do with in case and FTK. Hey, did you see my comment? Let me see. Sorry about that. Let me see. Started my Security Plus course. Started my Security Plus course on Coursera today. Any tips? Yes, I have some tips. What I would do, Atlanta, is I would get hands-on as much as possible. I don't know. Let me see if you have any other comments here. What I would do if I were you is I would get as much hands-on as possible while you're getting your Security Plus. Get your Security Plus, right? Coursera is great. Udemy, great. All those are great. But what you want to do is when they break out, especially if the real good courses have a part where they are walking you through tools. They're having you download a tool, putting it on your network, do run scans, or having you, I don't know, set up a network, or they're having you put up a firewall or something. Follow along with them as they're having you do it. I just did this. I'm not telling you nothing I don't currently do myself. I'm trying to get smarter on cloud stuff. I'm just not technically savvy on it. I know virtualization, I know Linux, I know how to do other things, but I just haven't been done cloud. So recently I started the foundational courses of an AWS cloud certified practitioner, or a CCP, and certified cloud practitioner. And some of the best stuff I've been doing is actually following along on Udemy, following along with whenever he breaks out sign in here, start up an instance of EC2, start up, follow along with the actual labs, do the actual labs, and that's really going to help you. So Security Plus, no different. When they're doing the labs, follow along with them. If there's something you don't understand, go a little deeper on your own. If you don't understand, if they're talking about subnet masking, take time to break that down on your own till you understand it. That's one of the things I would highly recommend you do, because you want hands-on. You want to be comfortable with the technology. You want to be comfortable with command line interface, for example. You want to be comfortable with Linux. Whatever they happen to be using, you want to be comfortable with it. So actually get your hands dirty. Get in there and actually do the work. And another thing I would say is use whatever method you can for memorization. For me, it's writing things down. When I write it down, I remember it much better. Some people, they want to have to listen. If that's the case, get yourself an audiobook that's walking you through CompTIA Security Plus, and then start to memorize it that way. Whatever method that your mind picks up information better, use that for memorization. Security Plus is one of my favorite certifications because it's extremely marketable. It covers all the best stuff you need to know, the basic things that you need to know for best practices. It's one of my favorite certifications. And I've so much so that I actually had to take it twice. I took it twice. I took it when it first came out. I mean, showing my age, but it came out a long ass time ago. And then I had to take it again when they changed it. I have the one that lasts forever, and then they changed it to where you have to renew it, and then you have to get CPEs or CUEs or whatever the hell they call them these days. So I've since let it lapse. I haven't kept up with it. But Security Plus was my favorite. I used to actually teach it. All right, guys, I think that's about it. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Atlanta. Thank you, all the people on here that's watching me on TikTok. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. I apologize if I didn't get to your question. It's not because I don't like you. It's because I just have a lot of stuff going on right now. I've got all these people on YouTube. Thank you, Larry, so much for that $30. Awesome, man. Thank you so much, Rookie, for sending me a donation. Appreciate you. Wayne, all your great questions. Professor Black Ops, thank you. Everybody, thank you so much for all your support. Next week, I'll be on here about 12 o'clock Mountain Standard Time, Saturday on the 15th. I'm going to be giving out a free book. So this stuff that I'm talking about is going to be free on Amazon on the 15th. And I'm going to start kicking off a bunch of other free stuff that I'm giving. Stuff I've been working on for a long time, for months. And it's coming. So make sure you don't miss that one because it's only free for a few days. If you miss it, it's all right. I have other stuff coming out after that. But thank you guys so much. Thank you for everything. Thank you for your support. Appreciate you. And good day. See you soon.